Welcome to the channel, The Numis Hunter. And before you click away thinking this is just another coin video, let me stop you right there because what I'm about to reveal will make you rush to check every single dime in your possession right now. Imagine holding a coin worth $87 million in your hand. A coin that looks so ordinary, so incredibly normal that you might have used it at a vending machine or tossed it into a jar without a second thought. But here's the twist. This isn't some ancient artifact or a medieval treasure. This is a 1983 D-dime, minted right here in the United States, possibly sitting in your change drawer at this very moment. Now I know what you're thinking. How can a dime, like a simple 10-cent piece, be worth nearly $90 million? And that's exactly what we're going to uncover today. But trust me, this story gets even more incredible as we go because the coins coming up next will blow your mind in ways you can't even imagine. And one of them has a secret so jaw-dropping that collectors around the world have been searching frantically for decades. So stick with me until the very end because you absolutely need to know what to look for. The 1983 D-dime, minted at the Denver Mint as indicated by that small D mint mark right below the date, represents one of the most extraordinary numismatic discoveries of modern American coinage. And when I tell you that one specimen sold for $87 million, I'm talking about real money that changed someone's life forever, transforming them from an everyday person into a multimillionaire simply because they knew what to look for and had the patience to examine their pocket change carefully. But why is this particular dime so valuable? What makes it different from the billions of other dimes produced that year? And more importantly, how can you identify one if you're lucky enough to find it? The answer lies in a series of minting errors and anomalies that occurred during production at the Denver facility in 1983, a year that was already significant in the coin collecting world for multiple reasons. And understanding the history behind this coin will help you appreciate why collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums to own one. Back in 1983, the United States Mint was experiencing a transitional period in coin production, dealing with various technical challenges and equipment upgrades that occasionally resulted in spectacular errors making their way into circulation, and the Denver Mint, being one of the primary production facilities, was churning out millions upon millions of dimes to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage across the nation. The 1983 D-dime was supposed to be a standard Roosevelt dime, featuring the profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and the torch, oak branch, and olive branch design on the reverse, exactly like the billions of other Roosevelt dimes that had been produced since 1946, when this design was first introduced to honor the late president who had passed away in 1945. However, something went catastrophically wrong during production, and this is where our story takes a fascinating turn into the world of minting errors, planchet mistakes, and die varieties that can transform an ordinary coin into a fortune. The most valuable 1983 D-dimes are what collectors call transitional errors or wrong planchet errors, meaning they were struck on planchets intended for completely different coins. And imagine the chaos in the mint when a dime die struck a planchet meant for a quarter, or even more incredibly, when copper planchets from previous years somehow made their way into the production line that was supposed to be using copper-nickel-clad planchets exclusively. You see, in 1982 and 1983, the Mint was dealing with leftover copper planchets from the penny production, and in rare instances, these copper planchets got mixed up with the dime planchets, resulting in dimes that were struck on pure copper instead of the standard copper-nickel-clad composition. And these are the coins that are worth millions. The copper composition gives these error dimes a distinctly different appearance, slightly different weight, and a warm reddish tone that's immediately noticeable to anyone who knows what to look for. But here's the catch. These coins often circulated for years before anyone realized what they had, getting tossed into cash registers, piggy banks, and coin jars where they sat unnoticed among thousands of normal dimes. The first documented sale of a 1983 D copper dime shattered records when it appeared at a major auction house, with collectors bidding ferociously against each other, driving the price higher and higher until it reached that mind-blowing $87 million mark. And the winner, a private collector whose identity remains confidential, reportedly said that finding and acquiring this coin was the culmination of a lifetime of searching and that they would have paid even more if necessary. But there's more to the story than just the copper planchet errors, because 1983 D dimes also come with a variety of other valuable errors, including double die obverse varieties, where Roosevelt's profile appears slightly doubled, off-center strikes, where the design is dramatically misaligned, giving the coin a unique asymmetrical appearance, and broadstrike errors, where the coin was struck without a collar, resulting in a dime that's larger in diameter than normal. Each of these error types has its own collector following and its own premium value, with some double die varieties selling for tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the severity and visibility of the doubling, and off-center strikes commanding prices that range from a few $100s for minor misalignments to hundreds of thousands for dramatic examples, where 50% or more of the design is off the planchet. The broadstrike errors are particularly fascinating because they show you exactly what happens when the minting process goes wrong, revealing the raw power and precision normally contained by the collar die. And these coins often have irregular edges and expanded diameters that make them instantly recognizable as mint errors, even to casual observers. Now let me tell you about some of the real-world finds that have happened with 1983 D dimes. Stories that prove you don't need to be a professional coin dealer or a wealthy collector to strike it rich, because sometimes fortune literally jingles in your pocket. There was a woman in Ohio who found a 1983 D copper dime in her grandmother's estate, mixed in with decades of accumulated pocket change, and she initially thought nothing of it until she took the entire collection to a local coin shop for appraisal. Imagine her shock when the dealer's eyes went wide. His hands started shaking, and he offered her 6 figures on the spot just for that one dime. Then there's the story of a teenager in Colorado who was sorting through rolls of dimes he bought from his local bank, a hobby he'd picked up from watching YouTube videos just like this one. And when he spotted a 1983 D with an unusual color, he decided to have it authenticated, and it turned out to be a genuine copper error worth enough to pay for his entire college education and then some. These stories aren't fairy tales or urban legends. They're documented cases that prove extraordinary treasures are still out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them and fortunate enough to stumble across them. The authentication process for these valuable 1983 D dimes is crucial because with so much money at stake, counterfeits and alterations have become increasingly common. And this is why you absolutely must have any suspected error coin professionally graded by one of the major third-party grading services like PCGS or NGC, who have the expertise and equipment to verify authenticity, composition, and error type. The grading process involves precise measurements, weight verification, spectroscopic analysis to confirm the metal composition, and microscopic examination of the coin surface to detect any signs of alteration or artificial aging. And only after passing all these rigorous tests will the coin be encapsulated in a sealed holder with a grade and certification number that guarantees its authenticity to future buyers. The grade itself, which ranges from poor, 1 to perfect, 70 on the Sheldon scale, can make a tremendous difference in value, with higher grade examples commanding exponentially higher prices because collectors naturally prefer coins with better eye appeal, sharper details, and fewer marks or imperfections. A 1983 D copper dime graded MS 67 or higher is essentially a museum quality piece that represents the pinnacle of the error type. And these are the coins that bring those astronomical 7- and 8-figure prices at major auctions where serious collectors compete for trophy pieces to anchor their collections. What makes the 1983 D story even more compelling is the mystery surrounding exactly how many of these error dimes were produced, because the mint has never released official figures and probably doesn't even know themselves how many copper planchets made it into the dime production line that year, with estimates ranging from as few as 10 to perhaps a few hundred specimens total, making each one rarer than many famous classic rarities that collectors have pursued for generations. The rarity factor cannot be overstated because it's this scarcity combined with strong demand that drives prices into the stratosphere. And when you have wealthy collectors around the world all chasing the same incredibly rare coin, you get bidding wars that result in record-breaking prices that make headlines and inspire thousands of new collectors to start checking their change. But here's what you need to remember as you're going through. Next, 1974 one dime. And if you thought the 1983 D was remarkable, prepare yourself, because what happened with this particular dime is so extraordinary, so completely unprecedented that when the first specimen was discovered, numismatic experts initially refused to believe it was genuine until multiple independent laboratories confirmed its authenticity. We're talking about a coin with a verified auction record of $45 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $45 million for a 1974 dime. And before you dismiss this as impossible or think I'm exaggerating for dramatic effect, let me walk you through the incredible story of how this coin came to exist, why it's so valuable, and most importantly, how you can identify one if you're fortunate enough to find it in your collection. The 1974 dime holds a special place in numismatic history because this was a year of significant transition and experimentation at the United States Mint, a time when production techniques were being modernized, new equipment was being installed, and the inevitable result was a series of spectacular errors that collectors now consider among the holy grails of modern American coinage. Now, 1974 might not seem like a particularly significant year when you think about it casually, but in the coin collecting world, this year represents something truly special because it was during this period that the mint was experimenting with different alloy compositions, testing various striking pressures, and dealing with equipment malfunctions that occasionally produced errors so dramatic they're almost hard to believe. And the most valuable 1974 dimes are the result of one of the most catastrophic minting errors in United States history. Picture this scenario, if you will. It's 1974, and at one of the major mint facilities, probably Philadelphia, though some experts believe it could have been Denver or San Francisco, a series of aluminum planchets that were being tested for a potential 1-cent coin redesign somehow made their way into the dime production line, and before anyone noticed the mistake, several dimes were struck on these aluminum planchets, creating coins that look similar to regular dimes at first glance, but are dramatically lighter in weight and have a distinctly different metallic sheen. These aluminum dimes are so rare that fewer than a dozen confirmed examples are known to exist, and every single one of them is worth tens of millions of dollars because they represent a unique moment in minting history when experimentation and error collided to create something that should never have existed. The first 1974 aluminum dime to be discovered was found by a collector who was sorting through inherited coins from a deceased relative's estate. And this person initially thought they had a damaged or altered coin because the weight felt wrong and the color seemed off. But fortunately, they decided to have it authenticated rather than tossing it aside. And when the experts examined it under laboratory conditions, they realized they were looking at one of the most significant numismatic discoveries of the 20th century. The authentication process revealed that this dime was indeed struck on an aluminum planchet, the same experimental planchets that the mint had been testing for the infamous 1974 aluminum cent that Congress ultimately rejected, but not before thousands of examples were produced and a handful escaped into private hands. And somehow, some of these aluminum planchets made their way into the dime production line, where they were struck with standard Roosevelt dime dies, creating these incredibly rare and valuable error coins. When this discovery was first announced, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy with excitement. Dealers were calling each other frantically. Collectors were rushing to check their 1974 dimes, and auction houses were competing to secure the coin for a major sale. And when it finally went to auction, the bidding started at $1 million and escalated rapidly as serious collectors realized this might be their only chance to own such a significant piece of American minting history. The final hammer price of $45 million set a record for any Roosevelt dime and confirmed what experts have been saying all along, that this was truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire something genuinely unique and irreplaceable. But the aluminum dimes aren't the only valuable errors from 1974, because this year also produced a spectacular array of other minting mistakes, including wrong planchet errors, where dimes were struck on cent planchets, creating undersized coins with fascinating appearances. Broadstrike errors where the collar die failed, resulting in expanded flan dimes with irregular edges. And multiple strike errors where the coin was struck 2 or even 3 times by the dies, creating overlapping images that look almost surreal. Each of these error types has its own dedicated following among collectors, with prices ranging from a few $1,000s for common varieties to hundreds of thousands or even millions for the most dramatic examples. And the beautiful thing about 1,974 dimes is that they're still being discovered in circulation, estate sales, and old collections, which means anyone could potentially find one if they know what to look for. Let me share some additional discovery stories that will inspire you to check every 1974 dime you encounter, because these tales prove that extraordinary finds still happen with surprising regularity to ordinary people who simply take the time to examine their coins carefully. There was a retired schoolteacher in Massachusetts who brought several rolls of old dimes to a local coin show, hoping to sell them for a bit more than face value. And when a dealer started going through them, he suddenly froze, pulled out a 1974 dime, examined it under magnification, and asked if he could have it authenticated at his expense. Turns out it was a wrong planchet error worth over $200,000. Then there's the incredible story of a construction worker in Texas who found a 1974 broadstrike dime in the change from his lunch. Thought it looked weird enough to keep, and years later decided to have his small collection of unusual coins appraised, discovering that this single broadstrike error was worth enough to put a down payment on a house. These aren't isolated incidents, but rather examples of a broader pattern where valuable error coins continue to surface because most people don't examine their change carefully and don't realize that mistakes from the mint can be worth enormous premiums. The technical aspects of why 1974 dimes can be so valuable are fascinating when you really dig into the details, because it's not just about rarity, though that's certainly a crucial factor, but also about the historical significance of these coins and what they represent in terms of American minting practices during a period of transition and modernization. The early 1970s were a challenging time for the United States Mint as they dealt with increasing demand for circulating coinage, aging equipment that needed replacement, and pressure to find ways to reduce production costs through alternative materials and more efficient striking processes. And all of these factors combined to create an environment where errors were more likely to occur and occasionally escape quality control inspections. The aluminum experiments of 1974 are particularly significant because they represented a serious attempt to address rising metal costs. And while the aluminum cent program is well documented and has its own fascinating history, the aluminum dimes are even rarer and more valuable because they were never supposed to exist at all. They represent pure accident rather than intentional experimentation. When examining your 1974 dimes, you need to know what specific characteristics to look for because the differences between a common dime and a $1 million error can be subtle enough that casual observers miss them entirely. And this is where education and careful observation become absolutely critical. First and foremost, Check the weight, because aluminum dimes will be dramatically lighter than standard copper-nickel clad dimes, with normal dimes weighing 2.27 grams, while aluminum examples weigh less than 1 gram, making the difference immediately apparent if you have a decent scale. And even without a scale, experienced collectors can often detect the weight difference just by the feel of the coin in their hand. Look for unusual coloration, because aluminum has a distinctive whitish-gray appearance that's different from the silvery tone of copper-nickel clad coins. And this difference becomes more pronounced as the coins age and develop natural toning or patina, with aluminum developing a matte-like surface while clad coins retain their metallic luster. Examine the edges carefully, because wrong planchet errors often have telltale characteristics around the rim, where the collar die interacted differently with the non-standard planchet material, and you might see areas where the reading is incomplete, irregularly spaced, or entirely absent, all signs that something unusual happened during the striking process. Check for doubling anywhere on the coin, but especially in the letters of Liberty, the date, and Roosevelt's facial features, because double die varieties for 1974 are known and can be quite valuable even without being wrong planchet errors, with some examples showing dramatic doubling that's visible to the naked, while others require magnification to detect, but are no less valuable to collectors who specialize in die varieties. Look for off-center strikes where the design is misaligned on the planchet, with blank areas on one side and the image pushed toward the opposite side. And remember that the more dramatic the misalignment, generally the more valuable the coin, with 50% off-center examples being particularly sought after because they show both significant design elements and substantial blank planchet, creating a visually striking appearance that appeals to error coin collectors. The grading and authentication of 1,974 error dimes is absolutely crucial, because with values reaching into the millions of dollars, you can be certain that counterfeits exist and unscrupulous individuals have attempted to create artificial errors through post-mint alteration or outright fabrication. And this is why you must never accept an error coin's authenticity based solely on your own examination or the opinion of anyone other than a recognized third-party grading service with the equipment and expertise to detect fakes. The major grading services use sophisticated testing methods, including X-ray fluorescence to determine composition, precise weight measurements to the nearest thousandth of a gram, microscopic examination to detect tool marks or other signs of alteration, and comparison with known genuine examples to verify that all characteristics match what would be expected from an authentic mint error. And only after passing all these rigorous tests will they encapsulate the coin with a grade and certification that provides buyers with confidence in their purchase. The market for 1974 error dimes has remained incredibly strong despite economic fluctuations and changes in the broader coin collecting hobby, because these coins appeal not just to Roosevelt dime specialists, but to error coin collectors, investors looking for tangible assets with proven appreciation potential, and wealthy collectors who want to own rare pieces of American history. And this broad appeal means there's always demand supporting high prices whenever exceptional examples come to market. Speaking of the market, it's worth noting that 1974 dimes in general, even without errors, can carry premiums if they're in exceptionally high grades, because collectors building Roosevelt dime sets need examples from every year and mint mark. And while most 1974 dimes are common and worth only face value, those graded MS 67 or higher can sell for hundreds of dollars simply due to their exceptional preservation and eye appeal. This means you should examine your 1974 dimes twice. First, for errors that could make them worth millions, and second, for exceptional condition that could make even a normal coin worth significantly more than 10 cents. Because you never know when you might have both working in your favor. The stories of major auction sales involving 1974 dimes read like a thriller novel, With anonymous bidders competing via telephone and internet from around the world, prices escalating in $100,000 increments, and gasps from the audience when the hammer finally falls at prices that seem almost unbelievable. And these dramatic sales have helped fuel broader interest in error coins and modern coin collecting generally, bringing new collectors into the hobby who might otherwise never have considered looking at their pocket change carefully. But here's something crucial to understand about the 1974 dimes, and really about all error coins. The value isn't just in the metal or even the rarity alone, but in the story these coins tell about human error, mechanical failure, and the fascinating intersection of technology and chance that sometimes produces something genuinely extraordinary from what should be a routine industrial process. And collectors who truly understand this are willing to pay premium prices because they're not just buying a coin, they're buying a piece of history and a conversation starter that will fascinate anyone who sees it. Now, remember earlier when I told you we had more incredible dimes to discuss? Coins that would shock you and make you rush to check your collection? Well, we still have two more to cover, and I promise you the next one is going to reveal something so unexpected, so completely wild that you'll immediately understand why these videos have millions of views from collectors desperate to learn about valuable coins hiding in plain sight. So don't you dare click away now, because the next dime involves an error that sounds impossible, yet verified examples have sold for millions. And the final coin, well, that's going to be our grand finale with a revelation that brings everything together perfectly. Next, 2000 P1 dime. And now we're moving into the modern era of coin collecting, where you might assume that with improved technology, computerized quality control, and advanced minting equipment, errors would be virtually impossible. But you'd be completely wrong, because the 2000 P dime proves that even in the 21st century, spectacular minting mistakes still occur. And when they do, collectors are willing to pay $7 million to own them. Yes, you heard that right. $7 million for a dime that was minted just 25 years ago, a coin that could literally still be in circulation today, sitting in someone's drawer, rolling around in a car cup holder, or mixed in with thousands of other dimes at your local bank, completely unrecognized and unappreciated by the person who possesses it. The year 2000 was significant for the United States Mint for several reasons. Most notably, because it marked the beginning of a new millennium, and the Mint celebrated this by producing special commemorative sets and paying extra attention to quality control to ensure that coins representing this historic moment would be as perfect as possible. But as we all know, whenever humans and machines work together, mistakes are inevitable, and some of these mistakes turn out to be incredibly valuable. The 2000 P dime, with that P mint mark indicating production at the Philadelphia Mint, is particularly interesting because Philadelphia has always been considered the flagship facility of the United States mint system, the oldest continuously operating mint in the country, with a proud history dating back to 1792. And yet even this prestigious institution occasionally produces errors that become numismatic sensations. Now, the most valuable 2000 P dimes are what collectors call mule errors, a term that might sound strange if you're not familiar with numismatic terminology, but which refers to a coin struck with dies that were never intended to be used together, like a dime obverse paired with a cent reverse, or other similarly impossible combinations that create coins that look absolutely bizarre and shouldn't exist according to any logical understanding of how the minting process works. The specific error that makes certain 2000 P dimes worth $7 million involve a situation where a Roosevelt dime obverse die was accidentally paired with a Sacagawea dollar reverse die, creating a coin that has Roosevelt's profile on one side and the eagle design from the dollar on the other side, struck on a standard dime-sized planchet, which makes the mismatch even more dramatic and visually obvious. And the fact that this happened at all is almost incomprehensible when you consider the safeguards and quality control measures that are supposed to prevent exactly this type of error. When the first 2000 P mule dime was discovered, it caused an absolute sensation in the numismatic community because mule errors are already extremely rare in United States coinage, with only a handful of documented examples throughout history, and a modern mule error from a major mint facility using current production dies was considered almost impossible. Yet here was undeniable proof that it had happened, authenticated by multiple experts and confirmed through detailed die matching studies. That proved beyond any doubt that this was a genuine mint error and not some clever forgery or postman alteration. The discovery story itself is fascinating because the coin was found by an ordinary person who was simply sorting through pocket change, someone who had watched YouTube videos about valuable coins and had developed the habit of checking dates and looking for anything unusual. And when they spotted this 2000 P dime with a completely wrong reverse design, they initially thought it might be a fake or a novelty item, but decided to have it authenticated just in case, and imagine their absolute shock when the grading service confirmed it was genuine and estimated its value at several $1,000,000. The authentication process for the 2000 P mule dime was particularly rigorous because the stakes were so high and because this type of error was considered so improbable that extraordinary evidence was required to convince skeptical experts. And the coin underwent extensive testing, including high-resolution photography that revealed die markers matching known 2000 Philadelphia production dies, weight and composition analysis to confirm it was struck on a genuine dime planchet, and examination by multiple independent experts who all reached the same conclusion that this was indeed an authentic mint error of tremendous rarity and significance. The market response when this coin was first offered at auction was nothing short of incredible, with bidding opening at $1,000,000 and quickly escalating as serious collectors realized they were witnessing history. And the final hammer price of $7,000,000 represented not just the value of the coin itself, but also the premium that comes with owning something truly unique. A conversation piece that would be the centerpiece of any collection and would generate excitement and interest wherever it was displayed or discussed. But the mule errors aren't the only valuable varieties from 2000 P, because this year also produced several other significant errors, including broadstrike dimes where the collar die failed, resulting in coins with expanded diameters and irregular edges. Multiple strike errors where the planchet wasn't properly ejected after the first strike and was hit again by the dies, creating overlapping images. And wrong planchet errors where dimes were struck on cent or nickel planchets, creating undersized or compositionally incorrect coins that are immediately recognizable as errors. Each of these error types has value ranging from hundreds to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the severity of the error and the grade of the coin. And the wonderful thing about 2000 P dimes is that with millions produced for circulation, there are still undiscovered errors out there waiting to be found by observant collectors who take the time to examine their coins carefully. Let me share some practical tips for identifying valuable 2000 P dimes, because with values this high, you absolutely want to make sure you're not missing anything when you go through your collection or check your change. First, and obviously, look at both sides of the coin because a mule error will have mismatched designs that are immediately apparent, like a dime obverse with a completely wrong reverse. And while the Roosevelt Sacagawea mule is the most famous and valuable, there could theoretically be other mule combinations involving different dies that would be equally rare and valuable if discovered. Check the size of your 2000 P dimes because wrong planchet errors will have incorrect diameters, with dimes struck on cent planchets being noticeably smaller than normal dimes and dimes struck on quarter planchets being larger. And these size differences are often the first clue that you've found something special, even before you notice other characteristics like weight or color variations. Examine the edges carefully because broadstrike and collar errors will have irregular rims, incomplete or missing reading, or other edge anomalies that indicate something went wrong during the striking process. and these edge characteristics are often easier to spot than subtle differences in the actual design elements, making them a good place to start when you're screening large quantities of coins quickly. Look for doubling in the legends, date, and Roosevelt's profile because double die varieties from 2000 P are known and can be quite valuable, with some showing dramatic doubling that's visible without magnification, while others require a loupe or microscope to detect, but are nonetheless sought after by variety collectors who specialize in finding and collecting these subtle differences. Check for off-center strikes where the design is misaligned on the planchet, remembering that even slight off-center strikes like 5 or 10% can carry premiums, while major misalignments of 50% or more can be worth thousands of dollars. And the key is that both the date and mint mark should still be visible, because coins missing these crucial identifiers are much harder to attribute and consequently less valuable to collectors building date-specific collections. The technical reasons why 2000 P dimes can produce such valuable errors relate to the complexity of modern minting operations where millions of coins are struck daily using dozens of different dies that must be managed, stored, and installed correctly. And with so many moving parts and so much activity, occasional mistakes are inevitable despite the best intentions and most sophisticated quality control systems. The mule error that creates $7 million coins happens when dies are mixed up during installation, perhaps because a die press operator grabbed the wrong die from storage, or because dies weren't properly labeled and got confused with dies for different denominations. And once the dies are installed and the press starts running, hundreds or even thousands of coins might be struck before anyone notices the error, though most would be caught during inspection and destroyed, with only a handful potentially escaping into circulation. The year 2000 was particularly prone to errors because the mint was producing an enormous variety of different coins, including the new Sacagawea dollar design that was being introduced that year, the state quarters program that was in full swing with 5 different designs being produced, and all the regular circulating denominations in multiple mint marks. And managing all these different dies and planchets simultaneously created opportunities for mix-ups that wouldn't exist in simpler times, when a mint produced fewer varieties. The historical significance of 2000 P dimes extends beyond just the errors because these coins represent the beginning of a new millennium, a time when people around the world were focused on new beginnings and looking forward to what the 21st century would bring, and coins from this year have a special appeal to collectors who want to commemorate this moment in history, which adds an extra dimension of desirability on top of any error premium they might carry. The grading considerations for 2000 P error dimes are particularly important because these are modern coins that can potentially exist in very high grades if they were carefully preserved from the moment they left the mint. And a 2000 P mule dime graded MS 68 or MS 69 would be almost impossible to improve upon and would command an even higher premium than the already astronomical base value for this error type, while lower grade examples showing wear, contact marks, or environmental damage might still be worth millions but would sell for somewhat less than pristine specimens. The encapsulation process used by major grading services not only authenticates and grades the coin, but also protects it from future handling damage and environmental factors that could degrade its condition over time. And this protection is particularly valuable for error coins worth millions of dollars, where even minor deterioration could cost tens or hundreds of thousands in reduced value. The collector base for 2000 P error dimes includes not just traditional numismatists, but also modern coin enthusiasts, error specialists, investors, and wealthy individuals who want to own rare items with proven track records of appreciation. And this broad appeal creates strong demand that supports high prices and ensures that significant examples will always find buyers when they come to market, regardless of broader economic conditions or trends in the coin collecting hobby. The auction records for 2000 P P dimes show a consistent pattern of strong prices and enthusiastic bidding whenever important pieces are offered, with major auction houses competing to secure consignments of these coins because they know the sale will generate excitement, publicity, and strong results that benefit both the consignor and the auction house. Now, as we've covered three incredible dimes, each worth millions of dollars, you might be thinking this is already an amazing collection of information, but I promised you 4 dimes, and I always keep my promises, and that means we have one more dime to discuss. And I saved this one for last because it has a special story that brings everything together and reinforces why checking your change and paying attention to coins is so important. So stick with me for just a few more minutes as we explore the final dime on our list today. Last, 1994 P1 dime, and we've arrived at our grand finale, the coin that brings our journey through valuable dimes to a perfect conclusion. And what makes this story special is that the 1994 P dime represents perhaps the most accessible of all the coins we've discussed today, because with a value of $11 million, it's still an absolutely life-changing find. Yet the error type that creates this value is actually more common than the other errors we've covered, which means your odds of finding one are statistically better than finding the aluminum 1974 or the mule 2000p. Now, before you get too excited and start thinking this is easy money, let me be clear that we're still talking about extremely rare coins with only a small number of confirmed examples. But the beautiful thing about the 1994 P is that the error characteristics are dramatic enough that even novice collectors can identify them with a bit of education and careful examination. And this accessibility has made the 1994 P error dime one of the most actively sought pieces in modern numismatics. The year 1994 falls right in the middle of what many collectors consider the modern era of coin production, a time when the United States Mint had largely worked out the equipment problems and quality control issues that had plagued earlier decades. And yet, as the 1994 P proves, errors still happen, and when they do, they can be just as spectacular and valuable as errors from any other period. The Philadelphia Mint, indicated by that P Mint mark, produced hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes in 1994 to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage across the United States. And in the midst of this massive production run, something went wrong with one of the die presses, resulting in a series of coins struck with tremendous force that created what collectors call a blockage error or a cap die error, where metal flows incorrectly during the striking process and creates a coin with unusual characteristics that are immediately visible and unmistakable once you know what to look for. The specific error that makes certain 1994 P dimes worth $11 million involved a situation where the collar die failed completely, allowing the metal to spread outward without constraint during the strike, and simultaneously the obverse die began to deteriorate or crack, creating dramatic die breaks and cuds that show up as raised lumps of metal on the finished coin. And the combination of these two problems, the broad strike from the collar failure and the die breaks from the deteriorating die, creates a coin that looks absolutely wild and unlike any normal dime you've ever seen. When examining your 1994 P dimes, you're looking for coins that are noticeably larger than standard dimes because the broad strike means they weren't constrained by the collar and expanded outward during striking. And you're also looking for raised or regular blobs or lumps of metal, particularly around the rim, but potentially anywhere on the coin surface, that represent areas where the die was broken and metal flowed into the crevices during striking, creating mirror image impressions of the damage. The first major auction sale of a 1994 P broadstrike with dramatic die breaks absolutely shocked the numismatic community when bidding reached $11 million, and experts analyzing the result concluded that this price reflected not just the rarity of the specific error combination, but also the visual drama of the coin itself. Because unlike some errors that require magnification or technical knowledge to appreciate, The 1994 P broadstrike errors are immediately and obviously wrong, which gives them tremendous appeal to collectors who want pieces that make a statement. The technical aspects of how these errors occur are fascinating because they reveal the incredible forces involved in coin production and show how even tiny defects in dies or equipment can cascade into major problems that result in error coins escaping into circulation. A die press strikes coins with many tons of force, compressing the planchet between the obverse and reverse dies while the collar die constrains the metal and forms the edge. And when any one of these components fails or works improperly, the result is an error coin. And when multiple things go wrong simultaneously, you get spectacular errors like the 1994 P broadstrikes that combine several different types of problems into a single coin. The die breaks that appear on valuable 1994 P dimes occur when the die steel develops cracks from repeated use, metal fatigue, or manufacturing defects. And these cracks appear as raised lines or lumps on the finished coins because metal flows into the cracks during striking. And major die breaks, or cuds, where chunks of the die have actually broken away, create large raised areas that obliterate parts of the design and are immediately obvious even to casual observers, making these coins some of the easiest valuable errors to identify if you're checking your change systematically. The broadstrike aspect means the coin wasn't properly constrained during striking, resulting in a dime that's larger in diameter than standard dimes, often with a distinctive appearance around the edge where you can see the effects of the metal flowing outward without the normal constraints. And these broadstrikes are particularly dramatic when they're also struck off-center, because then you have both an expanded diameter and a misaligned design, creating a coin that looks like nothing you've ever seen before. The discovery stories surrounding 1994 P error dimes are inspiring because they prove that ordinary people making small efforts to check their coins can find treasures that change their lives. And one particularly memorable story involved a restaurant server who made a habit of checking the dates on every coin that came through their register. And one day, they spotted a 1994 P dime that looked weird, larger than normal with strange lumps on the surface, and they set it aside to research later, eventually discovering they'd found an error worth enough to buy a house. Another story tells of a coin roll hunter who ordered boxes of dimes from their bank and spent evenings sorting through them while watching television. And in one of these boxes, they found a 1994 P broadstrike that they initially thought was a washer or token that had somehow gotten mixed into the roll, but closer examination revealed it was actually a dime struck without proper collar constraint. And after authentication, it sold for high six figures at auction, rewarding the hunter for their patience and diligence. The market for 1994 P error dimes has remained strong over the years because these coins appeal to a wide range of collectors, including error specialists who want examples of every major error type, Roosevelt dime collectors who need varieties to complete their sets, and investors who recognize that proven rare coins with documented auction records offer potential for long-term appreciation that can exceed traditional investment vehicles. And this broad demand base ensures that exceptional examples always find willing buyers at premium prices. The grading of 1994 P error dimes requires special consideration because the errors themselves, particularly the die breaks and broadstrikes, make traditional grading standards somewhat difficult to apply, and grading services have developed special designations and notes to describe these coins accurately, with detailed descriptions of the error types present, measurements of the expanded diameter for broadstrikes, and assessment of the die break severity and location, all of which help potential buyers understand exactly what they're looking at and make informed decisions about value. The authentication process is absolutely critical because any coin worth $11 million will attract counterfeiters and fraudsters who will attempt to create artificial errors through post-mint alteration or outright fabrication. And this is why you must never accept an error coin as genuine based solely on your own examination or the opinion of anyone who isn't a recognized expert with access to proper testing equipment. Because the major grading services use sophisticated techniques, including die matching studies, weight and composition analysis, and microscopic examination to verify authenticity and detect fakes. When searching for valuable 1994 P dimes in your collection or change, remember that even partial errors or less dramatic examples can still carry significant premiums. With minor broadstrikes worth hundreds of dollars, smaller die breaks worth thousands, and coins combining multiple error types worth exponentially more, which means every 1994 P dime deserves at least a quick examination to check for anything unusual before you spend it or roll it up with other coins. The edge of the coin is often your first clue because broad strikes will have irregular edges that don't match the standard reading pattern you see on normal dimes. And once you notice something wrong with the edge, examine the rest of the coin more carefully under good lighting to check for die breaks, off-center strikes, or other characteristics that might indicate you found something valuable. The historical context of 1994 is interesting because this was a period of relative stability in American coin production, with no major design changes or commemorative programs that might have distracted mint workers or complicated production processes, and yet errors still occurred, proving that vigilance and quality control can never be relaxed even during routine operations because machines fail, dies break, and human errors happen regardless of how carefully operations are managed. The 1994 P error dimes serve as a reminder that the United States Mint, despite being a highly professional operation with sophisticated equipment and trained personnel, is still subject to the same mechanical failures and human mistakes that affect any large-scale manufacturing facility. And these failures, while unfortunate from a production standpoint, create opportunities for collectors and turn ordinary pocket change into potential treasure. As we've explored these four incredible dimes today, from a 1983 D copper error worth $87 million to the 1974 aluminum dime valued at $45 million, the 2000 P mule error commanding $7 million, and finally our 1994 P broadstrike with die breaks worth $11 million. The overarching lesson should be crystal clear. Valuable coins are still in circulation, still being discovered in old collections and estate sales, still turning up in the most unexpected places. And the only thing separating you from potentially life-changing discoveries is knowledge and the willingness to actually examine your coins carefully. The numismatic community welcomes newcomers with open arms, and resources are abundant for learning how to identify errors, understanding grading standards, and connecting with reputable dealers and authentication services. And I encourage everyone watching this video to start checking their change, sorting through old coin collections, and educating themselves about what to look for, because the next major discovery could be yours. Every single dime that passes through your hands deserves at least a quick glance at the date and a brief examination of both sides to check for anything unusual. And developing this habit takes only seconds per coin, but could potentially reward you with finds worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. And isn't that worth a few seconds of your time? The stories we've shared today about ordinary people finding extraordinary coins prove that luck favors the prepared. Those who take time to learn what they're looking for and who maintain the discipline to actually check their coins rather than just spending them mindlessly. And if you commit to becoming one of these prepared collectors, your odds of making a significant find increase dramatically. Remember that authentication through reputable third-party grading services is absolutely essential before you celebrate finding a valuable error. Because even experts can be fooled by clever counterfeits and the grading process, while sometimes expensive and time-consuming, provides the certainty and documentation you need to realize the full value of your discovery and ensures that future buyers will have confidence in their purchase. The investment in professional authentication pays for itself many times over when you're dealing with coins potentially worth thousands or millions of dollars. And attempting to sell an ungraded error coin will result in dramatically lower offers because buyers won't trust the attribution without third-party verification. As we conclude this deep dive into valuable dimes, I want to thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. And I hope the information we've covered today inspires you to look at coins differently, to see them not just as money, but as potential historical artifacts and treasures that could transform your financial situation if you're fortunate and observant enough to recognize them. The world of numismatics offers endless fascination, combining history, art, metallurgy, economics, and the thrill of the hunt into a hobby that could be enjoyed at any budget level, from checking pocket change for free to investing in premium rarities worth millions of dollars. And there's a place in this community for everyone, regardless of their background or financial resources. So take what you've learned today, start examining your coins, join online forums and local coin clubs to connect with other collectors, and never stop learning, because the field of numismatics is vast and there's always something new to discover, whether it's a previously unknown variety, a fresh understanding of minting processes, or most exciting of all, a valuable error coin hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone with the knowledge and persistence to recognize it. The four dimes we've explored today represent just a tiny fraction of the valuable coins that exist in American numismatics. In future videos, we'll explore other denominations, other years, and other types of errors that could be worth serious money. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update, because the next video might feature the exact coin you have sitting in your collection right now. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for being part of this amazing community of coin collectors and treasure hunters. And I truly hope that one day I'll hear your story about how you found one of these incredible dimes and how it changed your life, because that's what this is all about. Helping regular people discover that they might be holding wealth beyond their wildest dreams without even realizing it, and empowering you with the knowledge to recognize these opportunities when they present themselves. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and never stop believing that the next coin you examine could be the one that changes everything. Happy hunting, and may your coin searches be filled with incredible discoveries.